Right, let's review the very first React challenge of the bootcamp. So what we got first. Question number 1, React beginner. Yeah, so that was a gift, right? That was very simple. We have to create a component called welcome. So whenever we invoke the component, we run it, it should return welcome to React, comma, space, and then the name of the user. Could be Peter, could be Donald, could be Boris, whatever. So then on the right-hand side, look, the structure of the component has been already created for us. So that simplifies things a bit. So in here, the only thing we need to type is, welcome to React, comma, and then what? Props. Curly braces, props, dot user. Exclamation mark. Nice one, guys. Yes, that should be it, right? Let's see if it works, and I'll propose you something. Yes, it does work. I'll do something. Even though that's absolutely perfect, that's not the way I do things. And I'll tell you why. This is a common pattern in React where you import props, and then you need to do props.user, props.person, props all the time, right? That's exhausting. I feel very exhausted after typing props 20 times. So in JavaScript, there is a new and sexy pattern that we'll cover as one of the workshops in the future that is called object destructuring. And what object destructuring means? It means if you got an object, props is an object. Do you agree on that? Mm-hmm. It's not an array, it's not a boolean, right? It's an object. We can do that. Look. You see? What I did here is, instead of getting the entire object, I only care about one property, user. So with curly brackets, we can drill down, we can inspect the content of the object and only access the properties we want. We can have multiple properties, user, car, address, whatever, yeah? But in that particular case, we only have one, which is the user. So now, look, I don't have to type props anymore. Slightly simpler, yeah? You'll get used to that in the long term, promise. For now, let's see if it works. It does work. No elegance issues, so that means the code is correct.
I question.
Go for it. Yep.
When we have the props there instead of the user,
Yeah.
does that mean we are actually declaring props with that function welcome at that time there?
So
the user, what we have right now, we have props, right?
yeah, props, yeah.
Okay, we declared it for user. Now we declare the props. Is that what it is when we have it there?
You declare props, no, you declare an argument. I can call that Ahmed. That could be fine, right? It doesn't matter the name of the variable. It's just one argument.
But now we're removing the declaration of the argument.
Yeah, correct. So if we run it, it will work. But if we don't like to type Ahmed all the time, we can simply destructure that object. Let's type in user. Yeah. Again, we'll do a workshop to explain that pattern. But for now, I think it's good if that starts sounding familiar in your head. And what you did, I believe everyone did pretty much the same thing, right? I'm not expecting anything exotic here. Right, so let me quickly have a look. Yeah, all good, all good. Easy peasy, right? 20 points for free. Right, so can anyone tell me why it didn't work for it worked? Correct, so that's the first thing, right? The message should be dynamic for every different user. However, we are passing the props, that's correct, but we are not using them, yeah? You see them here. Anything else?
And he's doing a string as well?
Correct. These quotes are not convenient here because they will be displayed. Quotes, welcome to React, quotes, right? We don't want them. Doesn't make any sense, Igor?
Yeah, yes.
But you don't feel convinced. And that's it. All right, so Edward, if you have any problem with the question, just let us know and we can review it as many times as necessary. Question number 2, what we got today here. Question number 2, get the welcome message in 2 paragraphs. So again, very similar, right? The structure is very similar. Welcome component. Let's make sure we're comfortable with the syntax. Some of you may find React training a bit harder than JavaScript training because of all these weird things, shallow, fine, to have length, yeah? That's true. However, that's the real way we test code. This is using a test runner under the hood, yeah? If you are working a multi-billion app, you want to have some unit tests to make sure your code works on every single scenario. We'll talk about testing towards the end of the bootcamp. But now, by accident, you are getting familiar with the syntax of testing, which is very, very, very important. So in here, we expect to have how many paragraphs, guys? 2. Because look, welcome find P paragraph to have length 2. In other words, 2 paragraphs. On the first paragraph, we should display welcome. On the second paragraph, we should display to React. No problem at all. On the right-hand side, we already got the first paragraph, so we can copy it and then type to React. Does it make sense? And that's it, right? Let's have a look. That's it. Yeah? So no problem at all. Let me have a look to your proposals. Again, I would be surprised if someone did something different, right? So, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's have a look to question number 3. Again, very similar, even easier. In this particular case, we expect 2 elements. Is it irrelevant if the elements are divs, label, span, p? So the only thing that matters is the selector. Correct. As Catherine said, that dot means please find an element with class first name. And then please find an element with class last name. Does it make sense? All right, on the right-hand side, we got the DOM structure. So then what do we need to do, guys? Add the class. Class equal first name.
Class name.
Class or class name, and why? Why class name?
Because it's JavaScript.
Correct, class is a reserved word in JavaScript. It may work, I'll tell you something. If I run it, it may work. No, it doesn't even work, right? So, but look at why, look at the warning. All right, at least you can see it's very easy to deal with this warning, right? Class name, blah, blah, blah. And then we run it. And then it works, right? Of course, we need to remember to add the semicolon. And then that's pretty much it. And what you did today here, again, interesting. Kiran, he added the class name, which is correct. Then he added another div, which is fine. Yeah, I don't really see the benefit of adding that div because nothing changes. But technically speaking, is correct. Yeah, and then what else? Yeah, so again, pretty much everyone did the same thing, right? No problem at all. All right. So, question number 4. What we got here? That was the complicated one, right? Yeah. Inputs, very important topic. Arguably the most important topic because this is the way we interact with our customers. Input, checkboxes, radio buttons, drop downs, all these things. So let's spend a few seconds trying to understand the problem. How many input fields do we have here? 2, correct. What type of inputs are we dealing with? Checkboxes. Correct. Correct. 2 checkboxes. One will be tick and the other one will be untick. And we'll know that because of props. Yeah? All right, so on the right-hand side, how do we display an input in HTML? Input, what else? Type, yeah? Checkbox, yeah? Let's leave it like that for now. So 2 inputs, 2 checkboxes. But then how do we differentiate them? Yes, look at the syntax, that's very important. Here we say, hey guy, please find an input, type checkbox, with class name, you see the dot? Class name terms. And likewise, the same thing with class name news. No problem at all. So we can add class name terms and class name news. Do we need to do anything else? What? Correct, the value. How do we know if a checkbox is tick or untick? Because of the props. So Farage suggested to add a property called value. And what's the value of the value attribute? Props.terms. And what about the other one? All right, interesting. What do you think, guys? Will this work or not? Yeah? Looks correct. Let's have a look. It does work. But then again, as I mentioned in the first question, I don't want to type props at all. How will we solve it? Curly brackets, correct. And then what? Terms, comma, news, and then what?
And then just terms and news.
Easy, right? I hope you agree the code looks sexier now. Will it work?
Well, that's called object destructuring.
Oh, that's called object destructuring. That's a new thing in JavaScript, correct. That's what the bootcamps teaching jQuery probably don't show to the students. All right, so that was question number 3, I believe, 3 or 4. 4, actually, yeah. And what you did here? Look, Kiran. Interesting. From an elegance point of view, I like the way he separates the attributes, one per line. I think it facilitates the process of understanding. But do you have any concern apart from that? I have a small concern. Yeah, correct. The spacing strategy. Look, type, space before and after. Class name, space after but not before. Yeah? I particularly believe that according to the styling standards, we shouldn't put any space here. We shouldn't put any space. But if we put the space, we should put them consistently. Yeah? That's the main thing. Does anyone know who decides these things? Who decides whether the attributes should have a space or not? Yeah, okay. Chrome Council? Yes. Airbnb, guys. Airbnb is the main stakeholder. Airbnb, you know when you want to go on holidays to Ibiza and you share a flat with 15 colleagues, you rent an apartment, Airbnb, right? They have a very strong JavaScript department. And if you're curious, you can search Airbnb React style guide. They have a really good one for JavaScript. And I believe they have a really good one for React as well. So essentially that's a document, probably quite long, where they explain what are the best practices in terms of coding and styling. Do they talk about spacing? I don't know. Maybe.
Yes, is that?
Yeah, they talk a lot about spacing, but spacing, yes. Look, spacing. Always include a single space in your self-closing. Good, bad, very bad. You see, they give you some examples. But I'm not sure if they tackle the problem of how to space attributes. But visually speaking, you can see they don't have any space here, right? Why Airbnb is so popular in terms of styling? Because they are not the first time on deciding how to do things, but they simplified a lot that process. Historically speaking, other big stakeholders like Google, they had and they still have and they still apply other style guides. They are very complex, very, very detailed, and that doesn't scale well, right? So Airbnb tries to simplify everything, and that's why that's so popular. So again, I don't think we should have spaces surrounding our HTML attributes at all. And then let's talk about Keybone, our friend Keybone.
Follow that style because we think it's good, or because it's good to do things like Airbnb?
For them, it feels better, right? And obviously they have lots of senior experienced developers. That's it.
You say it's better than
Not to have spaces surrounding attributes, the equal symbol on the attribute, on HTML.
because I haven't seen this before.
What?
Like each attribute for new line.
No, yeah, but that's a different thing. So one thing is to separate attributes on new lines. That's a good strategy because it facilitates the process of reading your tags. And other thing is whether on each attribute we drop a space before and after. Yeah? So I like the skeleton. I don't like the spacing strategy. Again, this is a subtle thing, right? If I'm complaining about the spaces, that's because everything else looks good, right?
But if we have a lot of inputs, I think it won't be work.
Why?
Because you have a lot line of code.
Correct. If you have a lot of lines of code, it will be a good time to refactor your component into smaller components. Starting from task number 7, I believe, in conflicts, we create components. Yeah? So components, the smaller, the better. If you have a huge piece of HTML, it's maybe time to chop it, to separate it into smaller parts. We'll see that, of course. Right, keep on. I like the spacing strategy. That's good. I like the fact that he set an attribute on each line. However, can anyone see any elegance warning here? Indentation, correct, keep on, look at, for instance, what Kieran did. You see, input, great, new line, and then he indented all the attributes. That's great. Why? Because visually speaking, I can clearly associate these three attributes to the input. However, in your case, it's harder to see. It's harder to realize that these attributes belong to that input. Does it make sense? Okay. And what else? What else we got today here, guys? So, yeah, Kelly, perfect. For Seb, it's all good. It's a bit long, but I think that's still valid. Probably you've noticed that vertical line, right, on the right-hand side. If you go beyond that line, you get a warning, you get a penalty. But I don't think Seb went beyond, just on the limit, right? Still okay. All right, now, can anyone see why it didn't work for Farets?
There's a missing
Input.
Okay, Ahmed, what are the two problems?
You see the div, you put div and the whole thing inside the div.
Yeah, so that should be an input, right?
Yeah.
Correct. And correct. And as Katerina said, we need to close the tag at the end. Yeah. But apart from that, I think the strategy was correct, right? It was very close. Yeah, I imagine. So Katerina.
It's not my solution.
It's not, what that means it's not your solution?
It's not my solution. I asked about it.
So are you blaming your team now?
Huh?
Are you blaming your team?
Blame.
I'm joking.
That the others are responsible.
Like, no, I didn't do that. I didn't do that horrible piece of code. No, I never said that. I never said that.
But they got 100.
No, I know. The thing is, it doesn't look that bad, right? Input type checkbox, class name. The main issue is that that's completely unnecessary. Checked, that's an HTML thing, but in React, we don't use check, we use value. That was the main issue, right? Apart from that, as a side effect, that line is very long, yeah? Save was on the limit, that's clearly beyond the limit. But it works, of course. And for Jack, again, controversial spacing strategy for Jack. You see? You see that? Yeah? No space here, but a space there. Right, so let's try to get rid of spaces, guys, on the attributes. And for Esteban, yeah, same as Kelly. All good, perfect. Catherine, interesting. Any concern about Catherine approach?
It's strange the way she uses the line down.
Yeah, I agree on that. Catherine, look.
Why does she ask checks?
So that's one thing. That's again same as Katerina. That's unnecessary, right? That's completely, it's doing nothing. It's ignored. But apart from that, she tried to add as many attributes on the same line, and then she realized she got a penalty, and then she said, all right, let's move the last one, yeah, to a new line. And then problem solved, but not quite, unfortunately for her today, because she got a indentation issue. My strategy here is, that's fine, try to put all the attributes in one line, like Seb did, yeah, that's fine. If you realize that this is too long, then do like some of you did, like Kelly and many others, separate them all. But if you start mixing like in one line 3 attributes, in another one 2, it's a bit complicated, yeah? Either every attribute in one line or one attribute on each line. That's my favorite, my personal approach. And what else? Sonia, again, adding checked, right? At least the good thing is you can see the team efforts. If someone does something wrong, everyone.
I didn't have it at the beginning, but it wasn't working, and then one worked, so I just put it. It didn't work.
Okay, fair enough. For Bilal, yeah, it's perfect. And then, why it didn't work for Sanjay? Because he didn't use input field, right? He's using some sort of recursion, yeah? That will actually.
He made it. Under the problem function, he called it checkbox. Why did he call it checkbox?
No, that's not correct, obviously. That's not correct. Cool. And for Ahmed, yeah, all good. And that's pretty much it, guys. Any question? No? All right, so last one, question number 5. I saw some of you dealing with this question earlier on today, right, Sonia and Catherine? So I'm sure you managed to solve it easily. So what we got today, we got here, that requires a bit of thinking. Look, we are trying to find an element with class name fixtures in plural. And then look, inside fixtures.find, that means go to that element and inside of it, try to find another element with class name fixture in singular. Yeah? How many elements do we have with these characteristics? Well, fixtures in plural, only one. Fixtures in singular, only one. And then look, on the singular one, again, find an element with class name team1, team2, and eventually result. That's pretty much what we need to build. We got the root element fixtures. So now we need to add another one, div class name fixture, right? And finally, inside of it, team1, I'll copy that, team2, and result, right? And then whatever the content is, Tottenham, Yeah. It's with two T's. Yeah. Tottenham. Oh, I'm terrible with that. Southampton. And finally resolve, which is probably 3-1, something like that, right? Yeah, okay, let's see if that makes any sense. Yep, that's correct, right? So again, the technical solution is pretty simple, just a basic piece of HTML. The complexity is to understand the requirements. That's the challenge is on the left, it's not on the right. Yeah, to understand what are the expectations. And what you did here.
For instance, in that case, I didn't understand the premises, but I understood that I had something and I had something inside and I just followed that.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Okay.
Because I understood the structure, but not the actual.
Okay.
The question.
Yeah, I didn't understand the question, just the structure that it was mentioned.
Fair enough. We'll get better over time, right? Obviously. Right, so for Kiran, it's the same thing, right? Ignoring the spacing is exactly the same thing. Keyboard, it's literally perfect. Nice one. For Farad, it's really good as well. For Seb, perfect. Kelly. You see, Kelly, she's adding some break lines, separating, you see? I'm not very opinionated. I don't think any works better than the other. Personal, right? At some point, standards are not going to tell you how to do things, right? To me, which one is better, left or right? I'm not opinionated at all. So I think both are equally valid. Katerina, all good. Jack, yeah, so everyone did pretty much the same, right? No problem at all. All right. So, I think that's pretty much it regarding beginner. Do you have any questions? No? It wasn't that complicated, I hope. And if you struggle with any of the points, yeah, so feel free to drop me a message on Slack and we can review it one-to-one. Okay, because we still got a few minutes, I would like to solve one question on intermediate, only one, the first one. So, and the reason why I want to solve the first one is because it introduced something vital in React. I'm talking about as number 13. State. State is arguably the most important thing in React. Some of you have been asking, hey, why you talk about class, but I use functions, all these things, right? In React, there are two ways to create components. One is functions and one is classes. They are equivalent in some cases. Classes are more powerful. And this is a good example. When we talk about functions, we refer to them as stateless components. You don't have any state. You don't have to manage to interact with the user. You just display, you vomit some content. With stateful components that are classes, you can update the user interface based on, for instance, user events. So whenever I click on a button, I show a message. Thank you for clicking on the button. Yeah? Whenever I check my checkbox, I redirect the user somewhere else. So there is some interaction. How do we do that? Of course, it goes without saying, we'll do a workshop about that, right? But I would like at least to give you a feeling, if it's the first time you see that, about how stateful components work. So once you do the workshop with either Gray or me, at least you'll have some basic understanding about its behavior. So let's try to read the expectation first. The first part is pretty simple, right? Input type text. I'm sure you know how to do it. We did a couple of checkboxes a few minutes ago. And then look. Then we say, hey, the value of the input should be Peter. Okay, we can do that, no problem at all. We can have a value attribute equals Peter. But things start getting a bit more complicated on that line. Because we start interacting with the user. So the user is replacing Peter with Olivia. He's typing or she's typing. Yeah? So then we want to make sure that whenever we change the value of the input, React is capturing the change. So how do we do that? We need to do a few things. First of all, we need to introduce something called state. State will be the dynamic part of your component. And how do we do that? There is something called constructor. You may have seen that before. When you declare constructor, that's a function, that's a JavaScript function. The first thing we do is to type super. We'll learn towards the end of the bootcamp why we need to type super. But for now, remember you need to do that. If you don't do that, it won't work. You'll get a message saying, please remember to call super. And then, look, that's the important part. This is not a state. Here we'll declare an object with the properties that will change based on the user interaction. So what are we going to change, guys? The name, all right, fantastic, the name. So let's create a property called name empty string, for instance, for now. The init value of the name. And then what? Then we can declare another function called render. And as part of the render, correct, we can return some HTML. I'll show you in a second as soon as I charge my laptop. Here you go. All right, so render, here we need to display input, what else? Type text, correct? Value, and value what? I want to use that value. How do we pass the value here? This dot state dot name. Ah, look at His Majesty Esteban, right? Inside curly brackets, that's true, that's true. If you use single quotes, it will be taken as it is. This dot state dot name. We don't want that. We want to evaluate that expression. This is JavaScript, right? It's a JavaScript object. Whenever you got a JavaScript object, remember we have to surround it with brackets. And then obviously we don't want the string, right?
In which cases you have to put that space after the curly bracket and when it's because on top when you put name, colon,
Yeah?
there you have spaces
Yeah?
after.
Again, that's Airbnb way of coding. Yeah? They say whenever you have an object, please have a space surrounding.
Okay.
Yeah? Again, that's not vital. If you struggle with that, that's okay. Your code is not going to fail just because of that. If you know things like Python, if you do that in Python, it won't work. JavaScript is a bit more flexible sometimes, right? Okay, this is the set of name. What happens if I evaluate it as it is? Where do you think it will fail, if it fails anywhere, guys? The first expect here. All right, let's have a look. Let's run the code as it is. So Kelly is right. It fails on the first expect. Look at the error. Expected empty string to equal Peter. So the value, the default value of our input, it's an empty string. However, the test expects to set Peter as the default value. So how do we fix it?
How does it receive the name?
Say it again.
How does it receive the name, right?
How does it receive the name?
Yeah, Peter. What are you going to put, Peter?
I don't know. According to the test, it looks like this is hard-coded. It's not expecting to receive anything. Look. Name Peter. Yeah, I like that, Katerina. Look. Name Peter. Say it again? I don't know. Well, I do know, but
What if it passes on the first step when it fails away and passes all of them are not Peter?
we'll see, guys. Now, After that change, where do you think it will fail, if it fails anywhere? Constructor, what is that? What line is that? No, here, right? If I evaluate the code again, it will fail where? At when? Here? I don't think so, actually. I don't think so. I think it will fail here. Yeah. I don't think that will work. I think the error will be expected Peter to equal Olivia. Let's see if I'm right or not. I'm right. Look. Why? Because we are not capturing user interaction. The only thing we did is display an input, type text, okay? The value is Peter, but that's it. If the user changes the name from Peter to sexyboy19, React is not going to capture that change. So now, and that's the complicated part of this exercise, because so far that's a beginner question, but now that's the complicated part. No. How do we capture user interaction in an input? Second? Event listener. On change. Esteban is right once again. Look, I'm going to skip one attribute per line for readability purposes, right? I hope you don't mind. And now what Esteban suggests is on change. Careful with the capital C. Be careful with that. And now that's the tricky part. It's one line, but that line is tricky. So whenever the user types something, that on change will be executed. And what will happen? It will send us an event containing all the details about what the user has typed. Based on that, from a human point of view, we want to update the state. Instead of Peter, we want to set the new value of the field. Does anyone know how to update the state in React? Correct. We can do this.setState, and in here we can pass the new value. Again, that's tricky, but it's good at least that it starts something familiar to you. Set a state, and then which property do we want to update, guys?
The name.
The name, correct. That's the name, that's the property itself. And now the question is, how do we access the value? I'll give you a hint. That's the event. That JavaScript, that's a standard. How do we access Olivia? The highlighted text is the event. Event dot target dot value. That's the way you access events, event values in JavaScript. E dot target dot value. Yeah, and that's it. Let's recap. Whenever the user types something, that code will be executed. E will be an object with many properties, and one of them will be target that has the value. Yeah, that's the way JavaScript works. So once we have the new value, then we can simply update the state, so React will be aware of the change. So if we run it again, yeah, you can see it works. Ignoring the missing semicolon, of course. And very quickly, let me compare Esteban, Jack, and Kieran, because they all managed to solve it. And that's interesting because they follow a different approach. They did all the same, which is different to what I did, but that's still valid. Essentially, the main difference is, instead of inlining that code here, what they did is to create a new function, something like update name. Why? I like it, to be honest, because it helps to tidy up our code a bit. They did something like that. Whenever the user updates the input, then call that method, update name. And update name will receive the event, and it will say no problem at all. Update the name with the new value on the input, e.target.name. That's it. That's the way React works when talking about user interaction. I know it may sound a bit complicated, but that's pretty much it. I believe there is a really good training topic on intermediate, which is forms. The majority of the questions about forms deal with sort of similar structure. Yeah, as soon as you start dealing with intermediate, you'll figure out. All right, anything else, guys? No? On the other side of the line, Sanjay, Edward, any questions, any comments?
No questions from me.
Okay. Was that Edward?
Edward, yes.
Yeah. Sanjay, I think he's frozen for 1 hour, right? All right. Cool. Fair enough. He's not even on the discussion. Cool. Thank you, Edward. Thank you very much. We'll now change session. We'll now do the retrospective. So stay on the line, please, if you don't mind. Let me just stop recording.